The deep space exploration ship, Dauntless, drifted through the serene expanse of the outer galaxy, its crew alert yet relaxed. They had been exploring the frontier for months, scanning stars, cataloging planets, yet finding little beyond empty worlds and frozen rocks. Their mission was straightforward: push the boundaries of human knowledge, make contact with any life forms, and bring back news of the universe's grander mysteries. Out of nowhere, the ship's sensors spiked. A strange, powerful signature pulsed on the edge of their scanner's range, a disturbance too structured to be natural, yet far beyond anything they'd seen before. The crew snapped to attention. Captain Torres, a seasoned veteran of the first wave of deep space explorers, ordered a closer scan. As data streamed in, it was clear: this was no asteroid or rogue signal. They'd stumbled into something enormous, and it was coming toward them. Before anyone could react, they were surrounded. A fleet of ships, each vessel easily 10 times the size of Dauntless, hovered into view. The alien vessels' designs were majestic, streamlined with an elegance humanity's functional technology lacked. The glowing alien insignias and ornate hulls gave them an aura of ancient power, a civilization that had perfected space travel long ago. The crew of Dauntless gaped, marveling at the sight, aware they were in the presence of something monumental. Captain Torres ordered silence as the entire bridge stared at the viewscreens, processing the reality of their situation. Without warning, the ship's systems crackled to life. A message beamed across in a language that Dauntless computers couldn't decode immediately. Sparks of data flashed across screens as the computer struggled to make sense of it, eventually settling on a rough, synthesized translation. It was clear from the tone: these beings weren't greeting humanity as equals. They were commanding Dauntless to remain where it was, or else face containment. Captain Torres swallowed, his mind racing. The tone of the message was sharp, authoritative, a directive, not an invitation. It felt more like the attitude of a police officer toward a stray animal rather than an interstellar first contact. The crew muttered to each other, their nervous energy permeating the small control room. The alien ships began scanning Dauntless from bow to stern. The crew watched as unknown energies pulsed over their hull, probing into every system, mapping every corner of their vessel. On the screens, detailed schematics of Dauntless popped up as if their ship's secrets were being read like an open book. The aliens were evaluating them, and the computers were picking up murmurs of the aliens' findings. Phrases translated as low-grade tech, limited propulsion, archaic defenses filtered through. The alien analysis sounded dismissive, like they were assessing a children's toy. The crew felt the sting of being underestimated. They were the best humanity had to offer, pioneers who'd crossed unimaginable distances to be here. But these beings saw only a primitive craft, a relic by their standards. The more experienced officers chuckled quietly, sharing bemused looks. They weren't offended, they found it amusing. The Galactic Empire's haughty attitude felt out of place here, among explorers who were simply curious, not conquerors. Captain Torres, regaining composure, attempted a diplomatic gesture. "This is Captain Torres of the human vessel Dauntless, representing Earth. We come in peace." His voice was steady, calm, every word a deliberate attempt to show mutual respect. For a moment, there was silence. Then the alien signal returned, but it was clear they hadn't interpreted the captain's attempt at diplomacy as he'd hoped. Their response translated roughly to, "No need to introduce yourselves, Earthlings. You are a small anomaly in the grander network of civilized worlds." The alien tone, even through the filter of translation software, reeked of condescension. It was as though they were acknowledging the humans out of courtesy, like one might speak to a curious animal at a zoo. The crew on Dauntless exchanged glances. It was hard not to laugh at the absurdity of it. Here was this massive, powerful fleet, the first encounter with an interstellar civilization, and they were treating humanity as little more than a sideshow. Behind them, the alien ships continued broadcasting to one another, not even bothering to lower their transmissions. The Dauntless systems picked up phrases like insignificant, non-threatening, and even curiosity. It became clear they were discussing whether humanity even warranted continued observation or if it was better to simply erase their memories and send them on their way. Torres raised an eyebrow, humor twinkling in his eyes. Guess they think we're harmless. A younger crew member chuckled, unable to hold back a smirk. Harmless? They have no idea, do they? The whole bridge echoed with quiet, shared amusement. For all their sophistication, these aliens seemed incapable of seeing beyond the surface. They didn't understand humanity's adaptability, its persistence, or its curiosity that had driven them this far into the stars. The Galactic Empire continued with more instructions, reiterating that Dauntless was to submit to inspection protocols and follow their lead. For its own protection. The crew exchanged another round of amused looks, almost in disbelief. The Empire genuinely thought humanity would simply fall in line, too intimidated to question them. It was amusing in its own right. For a species that prided itself on its intelligence, they seemed blind to the core of human nature. Finally, Torres responded, his tone perfectly calm but laced with an edge of mirth. We appreciate that concern, he replied, but we'll be just fine on our own. His words hung in the air, a subtle challenge. A brief silence followed as the aliens processed his response, their powerful ship engines humming ominously as they recalculated their approach. Captain Torres watched the screen, his gaze unwavering. He knew the crew felt the same. They weren't cowed by the grandeur and power of this empire. They respected it, sure, but they also knew it didn't mean the Empire had the right to dictate their every move. In that brief, defiant silence, an unspoken understanding swept over the Dauntless. The crew knew they had brushed up against something monumental, something grander than they'd imagined possible. And yet they saw the cracks in the Empire's demeanor, the gap between its confidence and its overestimation of its own invincibility. The humans were amused, yes, but more than that, they were prepared. They were ready to see where this unexpected first contact would take them, whether it ended in alliance, conflict, or something else altogether. The crew braced themselves, their defiant spirit rekindled, ready to face this empire that thought it had seen everything the universe had to offer. Dauntless stood alone in the dark, surrounded yet unbowed, with nothing to shield them but their resilience, and that quiet, unwavering laughter. The bridge of the Dauntless was silent as the Empire's fleet hovered ominously around them. Through the viewscreen, the alien ships loomed like a vast metal armada, each ship showcasing the intricate design of a species that had spent eons perfecting its image of dominance. Within seconds, the Dauntless computer picked up an open broadcast from the Empire's commanders, and the translation system rendered their speech into rough, synthesized English. Primitive life forms, Earth-based species designation, humans. The alien voice boomed with a bored, almost dismissive tone. You have wandered outside of your acceptable boundaries. Remain still and silent while we complete a comprehensive scan to determine the extent of your technological comprehension. The words dripped with an icy condescension, as if they were speaking to mere pets that had strayed too far. Captain Torres could feel his crew's growing irritation, but he knew better than to let them react too soon. He signaled to stay calm, suppressing his own smile at how the aliens seemed to have prejudged them entirely. It was clear, the Galactic Empire had made its assumptions about humanity, seeing only their modest, functional ship and immediately concluding they were no threat. More alien voices joined the broadcast, openly discussing humanity's biological limitations and technological naivete, as if the humans weren't even there. It is unlikely they have comprehended basic warp mechanics, an alien voice stated bluntly. A species still tethered to basic principles. Another replied with a hint of amusement. Perhaps they believe their achievements remarkable. How quaint. On the bridge, a low chuckle escaped from a junior officer. The rest of the crew, hearing these condescending remarks, began to exchange smirks, their initial discomfort replaced with disbelief. The idea that the Empire thought of humanity as some backwater species was absurd enough to be funny. Their assumptions were layered with such arrogance it was almost laughable. No one on the bridge saw these aliens as terrifying. In fact, the Empire's posturing came off as desperately insecure. The captain remained stoic, though he felt a flicker of amusement himself. As if sensing his calm, the alien commander resumed with another round of patronizing observations. Their ship appears to lack advanced shielding. The metallic structure, so quaint. Tell them to disable all movement to prevent any unfortunate malfunctions, the voice said, clearly relishing in the authority. Captain Torres responded, trying to keep the smile out of his voice. We are aware of our technological status. Our ship's capabilities are well suited to our needs. His response was polite yet hinted at an understanding the Empire didn't expect. The alien officers didn't quite know how to interpret the calm tone and took it as submission. Ah, they understand. Very well, the commander replied. Remain in place and allow us to document your vessel's archaic design. The Empire officials exchanged words that translated as study subject, possible specimen, and even curious relic. Finally, Torres couldn't help it. He let out a low chuckle, audible enough for the bridge to hear. One by one, the crew joined in, suppressing snickers, but they could only stifle it so much. The idea that they were some relic, some barely sentient species worth studying like insects, was laughable. They were explorers, proud pioneers from a planet that had, against all odds, reached the stars. The alien fleet had no idea who they were really dealing with. The laughter was picked up by the Empire's scanners, and within seconds, the alien commanders seemed to grow unsettled. Silence, human crew. Nervous laughter is unnecessary. Your compliance is expected. Resistance is futile. An alien voice boomed, yet the nervous edge was unmistakable. They thought the humans were breaking down from fear, unable to handle the pressure. This only made the crew laugh harder. The absurdity was almost too much to take. The Empire believed their laughter was a sign of terror. One officer leaned over to another and whispered, "If only they knew we're laughing at them, not with them." Captain Torres gave a small nod, his eyes dancing with amusement. To them, the whole scene was absurd, like being lectured by someone who'd read a single page of a book and thought they'd understood the whole thing. The Empire, meanwhile, carried on with their analysis, oblivious to the humor the humans found in their assumptions. It is understandable, another voice said somewhat smugly, that lesser beings would react with fear. They have surely not encountered a civilization as refined as the Empire. Captain Torres, amused by the alien's persistent misinterpretation, glanced at his crew, giving a subtle signal to keep the laughter controlled. They were clearly getting under the Empire's skin without even trying, and the Empire's officers didn't have the slightest clue. Each time a human chuckled, the aliens seemed to grow more confused, convinced it was a reaction of helpless terror. The alien commander gave one final, grand proclamation. Be grateful that you have been observed by the Galactic Empire. Your place as mere observers of our grandeur is a mercy you will not fully comprehend. It was a declaration that probably sounded impressive among their own ranks, but to the humans, it only highlighted the Empire's utter lack of understanding. Captain Torres raised an eyebrow. He managed to speak without a hint of mockery. We're honored to be seen this way. His words were simple, but the understatement carried weight. The bridge filled with quiet, controlled laughter once more. The Galactic Empire couldn't see that humanity wasn't fearful or submissive. They were entertained. The alien commander, misunderstanding the tone again, took the words as submission. Good. Remain as you are. Your awareness of your limitations is most appropriate, the voice concluded. The Empire's officers seemed to congratulate themselves, assuming that their message had been fully received and that humanity had been put in its place. But as the alien ships hovered, the crew of the Dauntless was filled with a renewed sense of humor and determination. These aliens thought they were the pinnacle of evolution and technological prowess, yet they were blind to the very spirit of the explorers they underestimated. Captain Torres held his laughter in check one last time, signaling the crew to stay calm. They didn't need to say anything more. The Empire could go on assuming, analyzing, and cataloging all they wanted. They'd never see the bigger picture, that humanity was not afraid, not insignificant, and certainly not intimidated. In that quiet, restrained laughter, the bridge crew found a strange unity. They didn't need the alien fleet's approval or their misguided sense of superiority. They had something far more valuable, a shared understanding, a mutual respect that went unspoken. The Empire could think whatever it wanted. For now, the humans were content to watch and wait, enjoying the irony of it all. The Empire's fleet shifted into formation, and for a moment, the vastness of their armada eclipsed the stars. The cold, metallic ships pulsed with energy, their sheer size intimidating in a way that was difficult to ignore. Suddenly, without warning, a wave of energy erupted from one of the ships. Brilliant plasma beams shot out in every direction, crossing through the empty expanse like shooting stars, an awe-inspiring spectacle of destructive power. The Empire's weaponry was unlike anything humanity had ever seen, glowing, dazzling beams that tore through space, followed by shockwaves that rattled the dauntless. The human crew, sitting tight in their command seats, barely flinched. The plasma fire arced across the vastness of space with an intimidating hum, only to dissipate into nothingness in the void. The Empire's shields flared up in response, projecting a shimmering barrier of energy around their ships, an impregnable defense designed to ward off any attacks. The whole display was meant to show their might, to crush any lingering notions of human bravado under the weight of overwhelming force. Yet the humans were unfazed. Captain Torres watched the spectacle unfold on the viewscreen, raising an eyebrow. "I guess they wanted to impress us," he remarked, his voice calm. The rest of the crew, eyes glued to the screen, couldn't contain their amusement. It wasn't the show of strength they'd expected, it was pure theatricality. The energy emissions, while powerful, looked wasteful, excessive even. It was as if the Empire was putting on a performance for an audience that wasn't there. One crew member let out a small laugh. "They don't even know how wasteful they are. That's enough energy to power half a colony for a year." Another chimed in with a wry grin. "It's like they're compensating for something. A little over the top, don't you think?" The captain nodded. "I don't think they get it. They want us to be scared, to cower. Instead, they're just showing off." The Empire's ships, seeing no immediate response from Dauntless, escalated their display. More plasma bursts followed, streaking across the black void, each more dazzling than the last. The ships cloaked and decloaked with flashes of light, blending in and out of visibility, showing off their advanced technology. The human crew could hardly take it seriously. The excessive light shows, while impressive on a basic level, were almost laughable in their sheer wastefulness. The energy output was massive, but the attack wasn't. They weren't trying to hit anything, just creating spectacle after spectacle. "Impressive," another crew member mocked. "If we were children with our first set of fireworks. How long do you think they've been practicing that routine?" Captain Torres shook his head with a smirk. "They're thinking we're intimidated, trying to impress us with their power." His voice had a slight chuckle to it. "Problem is, they don't understand what we're seeing." The crew continued to watch, a mix of disbelief and subtle humor painting their faces. The Empire seemed desperate now. Each successive burst of energy meant to send a signal, each display of advanced weaponry building towards some unseen climax, yet to the humans it just seemed like an overcompensating, wasteful show. "Do they really think that's going to do anything to us?" One officer scoffed, his tone thick with derision. "It's a light show with a price tag they can't afford. Good luck when it comes to efficiency." Captain Torres allowed himself a soft laugh. "Efficiency? They're running on spectacle, not substance. We didn't come here to watch a fireworks show." The alien fleet's displays grew ever more intricate and forceful. A massive beam of pure plasma energy shot from the lead ship, striking the void in a spectacular burst. It left a shimmering aftereffect as though the fabric of space itself had been altered, and for a brief moment, the dauntless crew saw what could only be described as a shockwave of sheer energy, powerful enough to send any ordinary ship to dust. The whole bridge trembled, but the crew held firm, their eyes never leaving the view screen. Another officer, shaking his head with a grin, said, "It's almost sad. Do they really think we'd be scared of something like that? We've seen lightning storms on Earth that pack more punch." The laughter came again, this time louder, more unrestrained. It wasn't mockery for the sake of mockery. It was simply recognition that the display before them, while impressive, was completely unnecessary. The power wasn't the point. The Empire's technological advances weren't lost on the humans, but the humans saw right through the hollow gestures. Do they realize that when they do all this? One crew member noted. They're just making themselves look like amateurs? They gestured toward the screen, where another barrage of plasma was being launched. You don't need to do all this to show power. You just have power. Captain Torres sat back, calm and collected, despite the spectacle around them. They think we're afraid. They don't get it. If they understood humanity, they'd realize we'd rather face danger head-on than be cowed by lights and noise. And then, as if to make their intentions clear, the Empire's lead ship fired one final blast, directly at Dauntless. The energy beam raced toward them, massive and unstoppable. The crew braced, expecting the worst, but in an unexpected move, Captain Torres didn't flinch. Instead, he casually issued an order to brace for impact, though his tone made it clear that no one on the bridge was seriously concerned. The plasma beam hit Dauntless, but only for a fraction of a second. The ship's hull absorbed the impact easily, thanks to the ship's own advanced shielding. The blast, while strong, was still nothing compared to what humanity had dealt with in its early space history. The beam faded against the hull, and the ship was barely disturbed. The Empire's ships watched with bated breath, no doubt expecting to see the human vessel crumble. But what they saw instead was a complete lack of reaction. Dauntless didn't even stagger. The crew, meanwhile, looked at each other with knowing smirks. Is that it? One officer said, shaking his head in disbelief. A little flashy, but all show and no go. The alien representatives, observing from their vantage point, seemed to grow increasingly perplexed. Their scanners noted the damage was minimal, less than expected, in fact. The Empire's officers began discussing this anomaly, but their frustration was growing. Why aren't they reacting as expected? One alien officer muttered. Finally, the Galactic Empire fleet pulled back, unsure of how to proceed. Their displays of force had done nothing. They hadn't intimidated humanity. In fact, they had only revealed the Empire's own insecurity, its need to rely on glitzy weapons and flashy power to make up for something far more fundamental, a complete misunderstanding of the humans before them. It was a misstep that would come to haunt them in the days to come. As the Empire's ships drifted back, clearly unsure of how to proceed, Captain Torres quietly observed the uneasy movements of the alien fleet. The display had been excessive, and the humans had proven their resilience, yet the Empire hadn't even begun to realize what they were up against. The humans weren't just surviving, they were playing the game entirely on their terms. There was more to humanity than simple survival. Captain Torres gave a subtle nod to his crew, signaling that it was time to reveal their hand. The Empire, in all its arrogance, had mistaken humanity's modest ship for a simple, isolated vessel, when in fact, they had underestimated the true depth of human innovation and adaptability. As the aliens had shown, they were obsessed with grandiose displays of firepower, believing that size and strength alone determined superiority. But humanity? Humanity relied on ingenuity, precision, and the unexpected. One of the junior officers, Lieutenant Ellis, began adjusting the console in front of her. She activated a series of low-key switches, the lights on the bridge dimming briefly as the ship's technology began to power up in stealth mode. The Dauntless' cloaking systems, usually a quiet feature, hummed to life, rendering the ship almost invisible to the Empire's sensors. It wasn't just any stealth technology. It was human ingenuity at its best, designed not to hide, but to outmaneuver, to adapt to any threat that arose. The Empire's ships, still circling, began to react more aggressively, their sensors scanning for any sign of the Dauntless. They detected energy fluctuations, but the ship itself? Nowhere. The Empire's scanning systems were still unaware of the humans' countermeasure. One officer on the bridge of the Dauntless couldn't help but grin as they watched the Empire's ships begin to frantically adjust their instruments. What do you think they're looking for? Lieutenant Ellis said, voice laced with sarcasm. A target? Another officer laughed. You think they'd ever expect the humans to be this crafty? Captain Torres leaned back, watching as the Empire's ships moved further out of sync. They'd been expecting a direct confrontation, an overwhelming show of firepower. What they got instead was something far more unsettling, a vessel that could disappear without a trace, reappearing at will and disorienting their sensors. It wasn't just that the Dauntless was hard to find, it was that humanity had developed tactics and technology built on flexibility, not brute force. We don't need to fight them with the same weapons, Torres said, his tone light yet full of conviction. We've got something more valuable, the ability to think on our feet. To adapt, and when the time comes, to strike where they least expect it. The crew nodded in agreement, their confidence growing with each passing second. They knew the Empire had been playing checkers while humanity was playing chess. And now, it was time to make the first move. Suddenly, the Dauntless reappeared, its cloaking systems flickering briefly before it came back into full view, right behind one of the Empire's largest ships. The human crew had timed it perfectly. Their ship was now positioned in the ideal location to strike. The Empire's fleet, still unaware of the human vessel's capabilities, remained focused on searching for something that wasn't there. They failed to realize the humans weren't running from them. They were positioning themselves for a counterattack. From the command deck, Captain Torres issued a quiet order. Within moments, a small, unassuming pod was launched from the Dauntless. It was barely visible against the backdrop of space, and to the Empire's sensors, it seemed like little more than a glitch in their system, nothing to worry about. Lieutenant Ellis let out a small chuckle. They'll never see it coming. A little surprise, just for them. The pod, equipped with a sophisticated mix of human-made decoys and high-tech offensive capabilities, drifted silently toward the closest Imperial ship. It wasn't a weapon in the traditional sense. It was a tactical tool designed to exploit the Empire's blind spots. And just as the Empire's ships began to realize something was amiss, the pod detonated, not with a violent explosion, but with a burst of electromagnetic pulses that overloaded the Empire's communication systems, leaving the ships vulnerable and disoriented. Boom! Said one officer with a grin. How's that for primitive? The Empire's fleet, for the first time, panicked. Their shields flickered, their communication channels went silent, and their ships, despite all their firepower, were now in a state of disarray. The Dauntless, unseen and unbothered by the chaos it had caused, moved effortlessly between the disoriented ships, launching a series of smaller, targeted bursts to disable key systems without causing significant damage. The Empire was no longer sure of what they were facing. They had thought they were dealing with a weak, isolated species, yet here was humanity, using intelligence and creativity to outmaneuver them at every turn. One of the Empire's commanders, his voice tinged with frustration, sent out a transmission. What is this? How are they doing this? The question echoed through the bridge of the lead ship, his panic palpable. The human crew shared a quiet look, knowing they had just delivered the first real blow to the Empire's overconfidence. They weren't fighting with sheer force. They were showing the Empire that they were not the primitive species the Empire had assumed. They were much more than that. They were a species that could adapt, that could innovate under pressure, and could win with far less than the Empire ever imagined possible. Captain Torres chuckled softly. They really thought we'd be intimidated by all that firepower. Instead, we're just playing by different rules. The response from the Empire came swiftly, but it was a response born from panic, not confidence. The alien ships, now aware that they had been duped, began to send out urgent messages, scrambling their forces to try and regain control of the situation. They were too slow, too dependent on their size and strength to outthink the humans. The Empire, with all its power, was now at the mercy of a species it had utterly underestimated. One of the human officers stood up, watching the screen with a smug grin. It's almost too easy, he remarked. They thought they were dealing with a primitive species. They couldn't have been more wrong. The Empire's commanders, unable to regain control of their ships, continued to send frantic messages, but the damage was done. The Dauntless was not the helpless vessel they had assumed. Humanity had just unveiled its true weapon, the combination of ingenuity, adaptability, and the ability to turn any situation to its advantage. The Galactic Empire, in all its might, now realized too late that their greatest mistake had been underestimating humanity. What they saw as a simple, isolated species had become something they could neither predict nor control. The tension in the vacuum of space was palpable as the Galactic Empire's fleet slowly began to retreat. The Great Armada, once so confident in its superiority, had been thrown into disarray. Their advanced weapons, their imposing ships, and their technologically superior strategies had all been rendered useless by one simple fact: humanity was not afraid. The Empire's commanders, despite their best efforts, realized they had encountered something far more dangerous than they could have anticipated. They had come to assert their dominance, to crush what they believed was a primitive species. Instead, they had been outmaneuvered, outwitted, and thoroughly humiliated. The Empire's fleet turned away, no longer eager to engage in further battle. Their once confident movements were now filled with hesitation and uncertainty. A few desperate signals were sent, but it was clear there was nothing left to be gained from continuing this confrontation. The humans had already won. Without a single shot fired by the Dauntless, the Galactic Empire had been forced to retreat. It wasn't a victory of violence, nor of firepower. It was a victory of wit, strategy, and sheer adaptability. The Empire's commanders had relied on their overwhelming force, their advanced technology, their weapons of mass destruction. But none of it had been enough. The humans had flipped the power dynamics entirely, proving that intelligence, flexibility, and resolve could defeat even the most sophisticated military in the galaxy. The crew of the Dauntless couldn't help but laugh, the tension of the past hours dissolving in a shared sense of triumph. It wasn't just the fact that they had won, it was the way they had done it, effortlessly, almost casually, with a combination of strategy, technology, and yes, humor. They had turned the Empire's arrogance against itself. Captain Torres, looking out at the retreating ships, chuckled. "You know, we really should have charged them for that light show," he said. "A little reimbursement for all the energy they wasted." The crew burst into laughter, their spirits soaring now that the threat had passed. They had faced what seemed like an insurmountable force and come out victorious, not through brute force, but through tactics the Empire had never considered. A junior officer turned to the captain with a grin. "I think the real question is, did they learn anything? Do you think they'll stop underestimating humanity next time?" Torres shook his head, a bemused smile tugging at his lips. "Not sure. But they'll be thinking twice before they try to intimidate us again. And if they don't, well, they'll get a surprise next time." He paused, looking toward the retreating ships. "I imagine a few of them are going to be rethinking their strategies. They'll have to adjust their whole approach to the galaxy." The retreat of the Empire's fleet continued, their ships fading into the distance, leaving behind nothing but the quiet hum of the Dauntless and the lingering sense of a battle well fought. In the silence that followed, one of the crew members broke the stillness. "You know," he said with a grin, "I'm not sure what's more satisfying, watching them retreat, or knowing we didn't have to destroy anything to do it. No explosions, no destruction, just pure human ingenuity." The captain nodded. "Sometimes the best victory is the one where you don't have to fight at all." The Dauntless drifted silently, the Empire's ships now just a distant memory. The human crew had shown the galaxy that humanity wasn't just another species to be disregarded or crushed. It was a force to be reckoned with. And in that quiet moment, as the Empire's retreat became nothing more than a footnote in the history of this encounter, humanity's place in the galaxy had been forever changed. As the Dauntless set a course back toward familiar space, the crew looked to the stars with a sense of quiet pride. They had taken on the greatest military power in the galaxy and emerged victorious, not with weapons, but with the unique traits that made humanity so unpredictable, and so dangerous to those who underestimated them. Back at the Empire's command center, officials and commanders alike were scrambling to make sense of what had just happened. Their reports were filled with confusion, uncertainty, and a growing sense of unease. How had this insignificant species, this human race, managed to best them without so much as firing a shot. The Empire's censors and military minds had been confounded by humanity's ability to adapt so swiftly, to turn the tables without warning. It wasn't just the technology they had underestimated, it was the sheer unpredictability of humanity that left them stunned. The Empire's highest commanders, once sure of their invincibility, were now left wondering if they had just witnessed the rise of a new galactic power. The humans' laughter had been their greatest weapon, an indication that they would never be bound by conventional tactics. In their unpredictability, humanity had shown the galaxy that it was not only a force to be reckoned with but a species that could laugh in the face of danger and still come out on top. The final transmissions from the Empire's fleet reflected this new reality. The voice of one high-ranking official was tinged with both frustration and awe. "This species, they laughed at us. But there is something else. We failed to recognize their strength, their resolve. Their unpredictability may be the greatest weapon of all." As the last of the Empire's ships disappeared into the distance, the Dauntless and its crew knew that their actions had sent a message far beyond this one battle. Humanity had proven, not just their resilience, but their superiority in ways the Empire couldn't comprehend. And for the first time, the galaxy would have to reckon with the fact that humanity, once thought to be a minor player, had the potential to shape the future in ways even the mightiest empires couldn't predict.